video prompted some South Korean Buddhist monks to offer to quit. 8 were shown appearing to gamble in a hotel poker game, filmed by a fellow monk.
Asia has a gambling problem. If you've ever stood outside of a nice casino, like ones in Vegas, you've probably seen large tour buses packed full of gamblers. And if you waited to see the type of people that came out, it was most likely a bunch of Asians. Maybe even some of my relatives. This isn't a coincidence, nor is it rare. Asians are obsessed with gambling. Just take the popular K-drama Squid Game as an example. Many of the contestants, including the main character, are playing only due to having gambling debt, and are then essentially betting with their lives. Though dramatized, it's still meant to be a reflection of issues within South Korea, and in this particular case, a problem the rest of Asia also shares. Because of pop culture and films like Ocean's 11 and Rain Man, you probably think Las Vegas is the gambling city of the world. But in reality, they aren't even close to the magnitude of gamblers in this small area of China known as Macau. Whilst the Vegas Strip generates $6.5 billion a year, gaming revenue from Macau generates a whopping $37 billion. But that's not even the most shocking fact. With Macau being made up almost entirely of Asian gamblers, 75% of the country's overall revenue comes from gaming, and the other 25% from hotel and resort accommodations. That means the entire purpose of Macau is gambling. So at this point, it shouldn't be a surprise that Asians love to gamble. But why is that? To tackle this question properly, I kinda need to split it up into a few smaller questions. 1. What factors cause Asians to gamble so much? 2. Why are problematic gamblers in Asia unable to stop? And 3. How does this affect the individual and those around them? Though social gambling is seen in every culture, many Asians gamble for a different reason, and will instead just use socializing as an excuse to cover their true purposes. When it comes to factors which cause Asians to gamble so much, it ultimately revolves around 3 things. If you've ever watched slice of lifestyle anime, specifically ones based around the work culture in Japan, it's very likely you've come across scenes where a businessman is seen gambling after work. This is because countries like China, Japan, and Korea have a problem of forcing company employees to work long hours. Compared to the Western 40-hour week, employees in these East Asian countries are often required to work 60, 70, or even 80 hours, with much of it being unpaid overtime. This is such an in-depth topic which I could make a whole other video on, which I probably will in the future, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, as a way to de-stress, gambling, which is an easy and highly stimulating activity, has become extremely popular with businessmen.
その人はちゃんと考えてるから、でデータも取ってるんで、仕事として個人でやってる。
Secondly, because of either a lack of understanding of probability or the belief that one is actually able to beat the house, some Asians will go to the casino and call it working as they view it as a side hustle on top of their normal job. There are even certain cases where individuals will quit their day job to pursue gambling as a full-time career, believing that it's their fate to win big at the casino.
Everything on 34.
Zoidberg, what are you doing?
I don't know. I think it's called roulette.
34 red. You win $288 million.
And this isn't even being like a professional poker player. These people will just go all in on something that's based on complete luck, like Baccarat, believing that they are that guy.
Trust me, you're not that guy.
And if you need more convincing, 91% of total income from Macau casinos come from this one game. This leads me to the last factor. You'll find that popular MMORPG games, especially ones in Asia such as Korean game Black Desert Online, often will give you stats that reflect and are measurable in real life, such as strength, speed, and stamina, but then also feature an arbitrary stat, luck. This is because in Asia, the concept of luck and predetermined fate is valued just as much as intelligence and strength. Hey look, by all means, I hope I'm lucky and this video goes viral. But since you can't measure luck by lifting weights or running a race, what's the solution? You go to the casino to see if your luck stat has gone up or down. Essentially, when gambling, many Asians are just trying to predict their fate. Being profoundly superstitious, the belief is that if they're worthy, they'll win money. And since luck is on their side, they may as well make some free money. But if they lose that night, that just means they need to make some changes in their day-to-day to improve their luck, and then try again. This is where the concept of luck truly becomes omnipresent in Asian culture. The concept of luck holds a uniquely prominent place in Asian cultures, more so than many other global traditions. This cultural phenomenon is vividly illustrated by the significance of numbers. For example, the number 8 is considered particularly lucky in China and several other Asian countries. This belief was highlighted when the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing commenced on August 8, 2008. Conversely, the number 4 is often seen as unlucky because it sounds similar to the word 死 for death in Chinese. As a result, it's not uncommon to find high-rise buildings in Asia where the 4th floor is relabeled as 3A or just completely removed. Luck also manifests in other aspects of Asian culture. During important celebrations like the Lunar New Year and weddings, it's customary to give red envelopes filled with money, a gesture intended to transfer good luck to the recipients. Additionally, the principle of feng shui, which involves arranging physical spaces to attract positive energy, is taken very seriously. Many high-rise developments in Asia include feng shui consultants in their planning teams to ensure their buildings not only follow modern engineering standards, but also attract good fortune. Even in the US, the influence of Asian luck concepts can be observed in the design of casinos that cater specifically to an Asian clientele. These establishments often feature high roller tables and slot machines, adorned with dragons and other symbols associated with luck and prosperity in Asian cultures. Despite the diverse demographics in America, including significant Hispanic and Black populations, outside of English, gambling machines will generally only display Chinese characters rather than Spanish, reflecting a deep connection between Asians and gambling. But here's the thing. I think when done responsibly, it's fine. A bit of fun here and there. However, it's estimated that between 14 to 23% of Asians have some sort of gambling addiction, which is clearly an issue. The fact it's like 1 in 5 means that chances are if you're watching this and are Asian, you probably know someone in your family that's gambling a bit too much for their own good. But this percentage being so broad is actually part of the issue, which I'm going to get to in just a bit. Regardless, even if we look at it from the lower end of the spectrum, it would still be double where I live right now, Australia's 7.9%. So the biggest reason as to why problematic gamblers in Asia are unable to stop, and also the reason for such a wide estimation, is because of the Asian concept known as the culture of shame. In Asian cultures, especially Eastern ones specifically, there is a prevalent belief that one should not burden others with their personal issues, as doing so can be seen as shameful. And this goes beyond trying to hide getting water splashed on your pants whilst washing your hands. This perspective can be particularly strong regarding sensitive topics such as gambling addiction, money issues, and mental health. I talk about this more in depth over in another video, so please check that out later if that's something that interests you. Consequently, individuals suffering from such an addiction may keep their struggles private, refraining from seeking help or even discussing it openly. The stigma associated with admitting to having a gambling problem exacerbates the situation, leading many to suffer in silence. And this reluctance to share or seek assistance ultimately creates a perpetual negative cycle, as the individual continues to grapple with their own challenges alone, without the support of professionals. Actually, that 14 to 23% stat I mentioned before doesn't even paint a proper picture of how secretive the gambling problem is among Asians. The UCLA did a study in 2014 that revealed the rate of gambling addiction of specifically Asian Americans ranges between 6 and 60%. Eva Samuelson's research paper, The Zone and the Shame, Narratives of Gambling Problems in Japan, which interviewed participants across Japan who have gambling addictions, further supports this idea as she concludes, after interviewing these gambling addicts, excessive gambling is entangled with the feelings of shame, guilt, and stigma that feed the escalation of problems and push the gamblers towards isolating themselves from normal relations and activities because of the need to hide the problems. Another interesting reason is that despite the fact that gambling is illegal in almost all of Asia, including mainland China, Japan, and Korea, there are many grey areas individuals and businesses do to bypass this law.
監禁所が別にあるから
それはなんで別にあるんですか？
まあそこでお金のやり取りしたら犯罪なんで、犯罪ってかギャンブルになっちゃうんで、景品をもらうって体で 景品をもらってそれを近くの換金所でお金に変えてるからセーフっていう認識です。一応
網目をくぐってるみたいな。
グレーって言ってました。
For instance, in Japan, whilst gambling and casinos are prohibited, venues quickly realized that in the fine print, gambling venues are only categorized as such if physical money is paid out in the same location. For that reason, the most popular and only legal way to gamble in Japan is to go to pachinko parlors, where the machine pays out silver bowls, which the individual will exchange for a gift, and then take to a separate location nearby to exchange the gift for real money. I mean, that's literally just gambling with extra steps, right? Aside from Korea, which I'll get to in just a sec, in China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Philippines, etc., Macau is the solution for gamblers. Every day, millions travel to Macau for the sole purpose of gambling, and like mentioned before, it's really all Macau is known for. And even though Macau is technically a part of China, they operate under the one country, two systems principle. Thus, gambling is allowed over there. Korean law, however, is slightly different. They don't allow their citizens to ever gamble in their life, even whilst abroad in a different country. They do, however, have one specific place known as Gangwon Land where gambling is allowed and the only legal exception for Korean citizens to gamble. So then why is gambling in Korea still such a big issue where even Lisa from Blackpink got her money stolen by her ex-manager so that he could spend it on gambling? Well, ultimately, it's very hard to track whether or not Korean citizens gamble abroad. But that being said, Korean gamblers have found another way to throw away their money, and that is through crypto. Netizens of Korea will buy crypto and then use a VPN to access gambling websites which would otherwise be censored in Korea. And this would be a great place to insert a VPN sponsorship, but I have no subscribers, so please subscribe. So how big of an issue is crypto gambling? Well, due to the anonymity that comes with these currencies, it's really quite hard to tell. However, South Korea is estimated to be the third largest cryptocurrency market in the world, and South Korean crypto exchanges account for almost 10% of the global trading volume, with the Korean won ranking among the top 5 most traded currencies for Bitcoin. That should give you some sort of indication of how widespread it is there though. Now, there is an argument to be made that a lot of online video games in Korea take crypto in their in-game microtransaction purchases, resulting in the prevalence of crypto.
Yeah, Nixon to accept cryptocurrency for MapleStory. Yes.
And honestly, I agree, as it kind of leads me to my final point as to why it's so hard for Asians to stop gambling. Even in the best casinos in the world, where payouts are considered to be more frequent, over time, the player will still lose money at least 50.0001% of the time. After all, the house always wins. Despite this, what if I told you there's a way for players to lose money 100% of the time? Introducing loot boxes.
There are now a number of studies that show that loot boxes are associated with gambling and gambling problems. They are a random chance item. You have to make a payment and you get something that's of value. And then you start to look a lot like a gambling characteristic or a gambling mechanic within the game, which is available to people without any age restrictions or other consumer protections as would be required by any other gambling activity.
Almost every popular online multiplayer game, especially free-to-play ones, have a loot box system. Games like MapleStory, Lost Ark, Black Desert Online, and many more are all known as pay-to-win games, where the better items you have, the stronger you are. However, these items can only be obtained via loot boxes, which can only be bought using, well, you guessed it, real money. These loot boxes not only give you zero guarantee that you'll get the item that you're looking for, but will more often than not give you dog shit items, forcing you to buy more. As you may have already guessed, this is where the gambling aspect comes in. Players will spend a fortune opening these loot boxes, hoping for the right item, but in reality, often the item that they're looking for has a drop rate of 1%, or even less. But it's not just pay-to-win games that utilize this, as you could always just avoid those types of games. The most popular game in Asia, League of Legends, which personally I'm also obsessed with, has loot boxes for skins.
This was the skin I was trying to unbox for $3,000. This is the skin I spent $3,000 trying to get on my Me Big Brain account. $3K. And I just got it on this one.
And whilst most of the time you can get these loot boxes from simply playing the game, certain ones which happen during events known as capsules can only be bought with real money. For example, the skin Divine Heavenscale Lee Sin had a drop rate of 1%, with capsules costing roughly $3 each. Which means if you wanted to guarantee yourself of getting this skin, you'd be looking at forking out $300. Look, to be completely honest, I do own that skin myself, but I got it on my first try, so I guess you could say my luck stat is pretty high. And whilst games with loot boxes are indeed common worldwide, the real danger comes in when 1, you live in a society with a culture of testing your luck, and 2, traditional forms of gambling are prohibited. This ultimately leads to a society addicted to gambling via non-conventional methods through online video games. In Japan's gaming industry, gacha games are a top revenue-generating genre, accumulating billions globally in recent years. These are games where players use real money to engage in a lottery-like system to acquire characters, a process commonly referred to as pooling for characters. Players often select characters to pool based on their appeal as fictional personalities. Similar to the loot box system, gacha games are frequently likened to online gambling, since players spend in-game currency without any guarantee of obtaining their desired characters. For instance, in the popular Japanese game Grand Order, the probability of obtaining one of the rarest characters stands at a mere 0.7%, requiring an average expenditure of approximately $558 in in-game currency to secure the character. And I thought my addiction to League of Legends was bad. According to a survey of nearly 1,000 Grand Order players, 20% admitted to spending this amount to pool for a character. Yet, a third of these high spenders failed to acquire the desired character. One distinct aspect of gacha mechanics, setting it apart from traditional online gambling, is the personification of odds. In gacha communities, successfully obtaining a desired character is often described as them coming home, suggesting that the character has acknowledged the player's longing and has arrived where they are meant to be.
Sorry, buddy. I didn't really expect you're gonna come home.
This personification reflects the deep emotional connection the players feel towards these characters, further complicating the dynamics of the gaming experience. I mean, for example, take a look at my Genshin Impact account and take a guess as to how much I've spent. The answer is probably too much. Anyway, what's even worse is these games often aren't heavily age restricted, leading to literal kids losing massive amounts of money. An instance of this is 13-year-old Chinese girl Gong Yuan, who lost her family's entire life savings of 64,000 USD opening loot boxes in a mobile game. And if you think she's an innocent child who wasn't sure as to what she was doing, it was later revealed that she also deleted chat and transaction records to hide the payments from her parents. Talk about an addict mindset, right? And yeah, I know this is an extreme example, but it does nevertheless reflect the issues of gambling with online games. As a result, the Chinese government considered banning loot boxes from all games, but following that announcement, China's biggest video game conglomerate Tencent had their shares fall by 16%, as well as NetEase, the second largest, dropped by 25% in value. So consequently, the government reverted their plans. This leads me to the finale of this three-part question. Whilst the obvious answer is that money is lost, as is with all gamblers, and then maybe they get angry and hit their kids, partner, etc., etc. Just like the West, the actual extent of how much Asians lose to gambling and the extremes they go to fuel their addiction is on a whole different level. I mean, after all, the problem of gambling addiction is so out of control that practically all Asian countries have outlawed gambling. And perhaps you might find that surprising, especially if you live in the West like myself, as I was confused about this law. Since why shouldn't someone be allowed to gamble with their own money, right? Why can't I freely make my own choices? After all, it's my money. If I decide to waste it, that should be my right to do so, right? However, this is where the flaw in the reasoning lies. The very foundation of this argument is problematic. Interestingly, if you hold this view, it's actually probably a good sign from a societal perspective because, well, you're probably living in a society that functions one step better and healthier than most of Asia. The key aspect of that phrase is your own money. In Asia, a significant issue that isn't widely discussed is that the funds involved in gambling scandals aren't just the gambler's own money. They often involve funds belonging to others. In Asian culture, power dynamics play a crucial role. Older family members or those in positions of authority wield significant influence. Because of this, control over one's own finances isn't as pronounced there as it might be in Western cultures, where individuals can firmly refuse to let others use it for gambling. In places like China, Japan, and Korea, however, rejecting such demands can lead to repercussions. Unfortunately, because of this, it's culturally and structurally more feasible to exploit social norms to coerce, particularly those close to you, into surrendering their financial resources to those in authority.
Police have asked the prosecution to charge former YG Entertainment chief Yang Hyun-seok and former Big Bang member Seung-mi for habitual gambling.
해외 원정 도박 혐의 인정하십니까?
경찰 수사에 성실히 임하도록 하겠습니다.
A good example of this, especially if you're a K-pop fan like I am, only a couple years ago, the company's head of YG Entertainment was charged and found guilty of misusing a substantial amount of money, likely from company funds, on gambling. Additionally, like I mentioned before, a notable incident even involved Lisa from Blackpink, whose ex-manager embezzled about $1 million USD from her.
Today, June 2nd, Market News reported the shocking news that Lisa was swindled out of 1 billion won by a former manager.
She had intended to purchase an apartment, and her manager insisted on handling the transaction for her. However, instead of securing the property, he diverted the funds to a casino where he lost the money. And what's interesting is, she didn't even end up suing him, which just shows how much power dynamics plays a role in the actions people make in Asian cultures. So getting back on track, the core issue here is that the money being gambled away is not solely the individuals. It often involves funds belonging to others. This puts extra weight on decisions like ones faced by Lisa, where refusing might jeopardize her standing within the company. This means the need to maintain trust and good relations can pressure individuals into making risky financial decisions. Oh, and to top it all off, in most Asian countries, debt after death is inherited by a family. So unlike the West, if you lose all your money gambling, there's no real way to escape responsibility, since the money you owe would just be passed down to your loved ones in the case of death. But some are selfish. And that's why occasionally you'll hear stories of entire families suddenly becoming homeless, having inherited the debt from a deceased family member. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around until the end. If you found this interesting, I recommend checking out this video where I talk about why so many Chinese international students rush to Western universities. If you're eating right now, I hope you're having a wonderful meal. I'll see you in the next one.